Hi, friends. I hope you're doing well. My name is Francina Omogo. By day, I'm a media strategist. I work for an advertising agency. Um, that's by day, that's how I earn a living. Any other time, you probably find me reading. My parents ensured that we always had books in the house, and that's how I got into the habit of reading. I'm also a last born child, and I think I'm a last born child. And when I was young, I used to be a snitch. So my brothers never really used to like hanging out with me because I was the person who would go and snitch to the folks and be like, "New people were away. They did this, and this, and the other." So my brothers used to run away from me. So to fill my time and to keep myself busy, I started reading books. Books are a form of escape. They're a form of escape. They're how you learn new things. They're how you learn that your experiences are not unique to you. Other people have gone through the same things that you've gone through that you think no one in the world has experienced. So that is how I got into reading books. And it's a habit that I have maintained through all my life now into my adult life. So whereas as a child, it was my parents who were providing the books. Now as a grown up, it's an expensive habit that I have to fund for myself. Yeah. Why I read? That's a very interesting question. I read to discover new things. I like learning new things. I am kind of obsessed with learning new things. You can make friends, you can watch TV, you can do all these things. But I find that when you read books, that's when you collect a lot of knowledge. The other thing is and especially in the COVID times, traveling has been limited, restricted. But I feel like when you read books, you literally travel, not physically because your body is there, but your mind. The thing about reading books is that the words are there, but then you have to make up the pictures and the images in your mind. So if you're reading about, say, France or Uganda, so like my current book, it's called Kololo Hill, it's by Nema Shah, and she's talking about the Asian expulsion in the one that happened in Uganda. So it is up to you to picture, to create the images in your mind. So it's a form of traveling. The other thing also is that it's a form of relaxing. After you've had a long day, everyone is on your case. Your boss is like, you didn't do, you didn't do, you didn't do. It's a form of relaxing. It calms you down. That's why I read, to learn new things, to travel, escapism, if you may wish, and also to calm me down. So currently, I'm actually reading two books, Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. A friend visited, and he found the book. And I kept on looking at the book, and I was like, I like Malcolm Gladwell book because his books are really well thought out, well researched. He's not talking about things that he made up in his head. He has researched. What he is actually telling you about are factual things. So because the book had been lying in the house for quite a while, I got curious. And that's how I started reading that book. And I'm really happy. People really are who they appear to be. So sometimes you meet someone and they do something really off, something really strange, that points towards them being a bad person. But as a human being, and according to what Malcolm Gladwell says, as a human being, you are wired to see the good in people. So you've met someone and uh, maybe out of nowhere they insult someone they don't know, someone they've never met. They've probably not even fought or disagreed on anything, but out of nowhere this person insults the other person. You see, insulting someone is not a good thing, and it points to a character flaw in this person. But as a human being, your mind automatically goes to, no, he's probably just having a bad day, he's having a rough time, COVID in a stress, watu hapa nje. But his argument is that people are actually who they are. So in the book, he talks about Barney Madoff. I can never say that name correctly, and how this guy scammed millions of Americans. But then no one ever saw it, no one ever thought it was a scam. He was stealing money, And the numbers, like he talks about this particular company who first found out about it, because later it's another guy called, I've forgotten his name. He has another difficult name, who actually found out that this guy was coming from, he was stealing from people. But this company, when they actually found out that Barney's numbers were not making up, they pulled out half or three-quarter of their fund. They never removed all the money, yet they could see, they had facts that this thing is actually not working. It's a scam. If someone does something which is off, for me nowadays, it goes into my head, and it's a red flag. That was a lot about Malcolm's book. Kololo Hill by Nema Shah. It was a blind pick. I liked the cover. It was yellow. And the thing is, I am not I am not someone who picks books because they are pretty, but it is something I started doing this year, and it's something I need to stop doing, to be honest. But it talks about the Asian expulsion. It's a really sad book, because what was happening is, if you had a British passport, a lot of Indians have British passports. If you had a British passport, you have to go to Britain. If you had an Indian passport, you had to go to India. And then he said, if you have a Ugandan passport, then stay in the country. But the particular family that I'm reading about, there were three family members with British passports. The father had an Indian passport. One of the sons had a Ugandan passport. So all your lives, you've lived as a family. And then now you have to be scattered to the three corners of the world, and you have to leave all your belongings behind. That's how that's how Idi Amin wanted them to leave the country. For me, I'm learning a lot. I'm buddy reading it with Joan. And I'm learning that the things that we are taught in class are not that expansive. Because in class, we were just told that, Idi Amin aliambia Waindi, he told the Indians to leave. But it never went into the details of their passports, into the details of you can't leave the country with money. And maybe it's because now I'm a working adult and I understand that you need money to survive. If someone told me right now to leave the country with nothing other than the clothes on my back and a couple of things, but with no money, I don't. It's crazy. And also the things that we are taught, we cram, we go, we sit for KCPE, KCSE, we pass. Our curriculum is based on, I give you something, you give it back to me, then I grade you. Well done, very good. Now go forth and become a doctor. Our curriculum is it needs to be looked at. And this book is one of the things that just pointed me to the fact that our curriculum, problematic. Um, so the genres that I like African lit a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. I was having a conversation with Julie Ambani, and Julie was telling me she doesn't like African lit because African lit is heavy, and it's true. I mean, show me an African lit book that is happy from beginning to end. There are very few. Myself, I don't even think I can name one. African lit is always a polygamous husband, or a child who can go to school, a child who's married off early. But the reason why African lit resonates a lot with me is because this is the nature of our African problems. These are the things that we actually go through as Africans. And you may be sitting here in Kenya thinking about a girl who could not go to school, reading the story about a girl who could not go to school, and you think it's unique to Kenya. Really, it isn't. Someone in Nigeria is going through the same. There's a book called Stay With Me. I don't know if it's a very heavy book. It's such a heavy book. I remember reading that book. The thing that I realized is I have an auntie whose marital problems were almost like that, not to the extent of everything that was happening in Stay With Me. This was almost a retelling of my auntie's life. So I like African lit a lot. And I also think that our stories are richer. African culture, our lives, the way our authors write, I find it richer. So last year I read this book. I was going through my the list of the books that I read last year. There's a book that I read. It's called When Life Gives You Lululemons. I can't remember the storyline. In fact, I was asking myself, me, did I actually read this book? There's a story at the back of my mind, but I can't really recollect the whole story. So generally, and this is just a bias, I'm not saying that it is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's just a bias from it's a bias that I have. I think African stories are richer. Um, but Miss Julie Ambani decided to introduce me to fantasy. And let me tell you, it's a whole different world. It's a very so the thing about fantasy, it's exactly that. It's fantasy. It's things you'd never think about. So my first Afro fantasy book. So again, I'm reading fantasy, but I'm leaning towards Afro fantasy. The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and she talks about girls who when they're cut they bleed gold, ridiculous, but then that's fantasy. Fantasy is actually escapism, and I think the reason why fantasy does really well is because fantasy does not talk about real life situations. Fantasy is not heavy. Fantasy, it's about girls who are cut and they bleed, girls who can run very fast, and they have this power in their body and whatnot. But it's a genre that's really growing on me, because I think life is heavy, number one. Then I read heavy books, so it's a form of escaping, and it's such a really nice palate cleanser. I think I should have read a fantasy book after I read Stay With Me, because Stay With Me did some emotional damage to me. So I'm slowly getting into fantasy. Let's see how the year goes. And also, sometimes something you get into something and then the universe conspires. I got an ARC from Sui Davis. It's called Son of the Storm. Son of the Storm, guess what, is an Afro fantasy. So here I am just getting into the Afro fantasy world. Then I receive an ARC. So that was just so what's that word? It was serendipity. I think it was serendipity. Yeah, my favorite books. Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. The reason why I like that book is because that book was written with creatives in mind. But I think it works. You don't necessarily have to be a creative to enjoy that book. I have reread that book so many times. And the thing about that book is that it reminds you that you have to keep at it, whatever it is that you're doing. You may not get it right the first time. You have to keep trying. And in the book, she says that ideas are like butterflies. The butterfly comes, lands on your shoulder, and it gives you time. The universe gives you time to actualize that idea. And what happens is, if you don't actualize, the butterfly flies away and goes to the next willing recipient. So there's a thing that people say, oh, so and so stole my idea. So and so, no, so and so did not steal your idea. The butterfly just to the next person who was willing to actualize it. Glennon Doyle, Untamed. My kids, especially my daughters, they have to read that book. I read that book and it just, my God, it opened my mind. So there's this part where Glennon talks about we think that life is supposed to be easy, and especially our generation, because we've been told what? Manifest. It starts with your head, manifest. But it's not about manifesting and tomorrow the money is there. That's not how it works. The truth is, life is not. Life is hard. Life is difficult. Life is actually supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be difficult. And it gave me a 90-degree, it overhauled my mind, because for the longest time I was thinking, why is it that my life sometimes is like this? Why is it that it can't just be easy going? It made me realize the way life is set up, and it has been like that since time immemorial. Life is it's hard. You have good days, but life is generally hard. So those two books, I love those two books. I think that the books that I'll keep reading. Last year I read Big Magic. I'm gonna slot it somewhere this year as well. Untamed. I read an ebook. I want to get a physical copy of that book. But I'd say those are my two favorite. Those are my two favorite books. I don't have a favorite author per se. I don't think I have that author. Maybe Bachman is going to be Frederick Bachman, the guy who wrote A Man Called Ove. Maybe because I like his writing style, but I've only read one of his books. I want to get his. I love how he writes, but no, I don't have a favorite author. Not really. I'm not loyal like that. I'm not loyal to authors. My reading habits. So before 2018, my reading habits used to be everywhere. And I think that's why that's why before 2018 I had a lot of unfinished books. I'd start a book and then I used to be a mood reader before 2018. I'd start a book and then get in the middle and I'm just like, I'm not feeling this book. Moving on. In 2018, I started reading in the morning when I just before getting ready to go to work, read about 50 or so pages, then get ready, and then lunch hour at work I'd also read, because I mean no one is paying me for lunch hour, so I decided I'm not going to be sitting working. No one is going on. Your lunch hour is not paid. So I decided to do something for myself. I decided to read. So I'd read a lot over my lunch hour, and then also in the evening. So in the evening, I'd go back home, make dinner, and then read a book. So then that became a habit. So nowadays in the morning, and especially now with the pandemic, we're working from home a lot. Nowadays, you don't have to really, go through traffic and what. Oh, I also used to read in the matatu, which is, by the way, that's a just take care. If you're reading from your phone, this is Nairobi, be careful because someone will snatch your phone. But if you're reading a book, by the way, let me tell you, no one cares about books. Thieves along the streets, no one cares about books. So that is how I added more reading time. And it's something that I still do to date. I read in the morning, I read over lunch hour, even when I'm working from home, and I read in the evening. So that is how I created time, because a lot of people normally ask, how do I find time for reading? You have to be intentional about it. Just as you have to be, if you want to lose weight, you have to be intentional about going to the gym. It's the same thing with reading. People assume that because it's a habit, it will just happen. You will just read. You won't just read. You have to be intentional about it. You have to create time. Um, the other thing, how I pick my books. So again, this, it's you learn some of these things as you go. Initially, it was okay, let's read this one. We read it. Let's read this one. We read it. But I wasn't intentional to the point of I'm going to put down these 5 books. So then again, that is something that I started doing this year. Buddy reading is something that I am just getting into this year, and it's quite enjoyable. It keeps you going. The first buddy read that I did was for the Gilded Ones. We were quite a number of us. There was Faith, there were quite a number of people, and the thing that I enjoyed the most about it was that people were seeing the book from different perspectives. The way I read a book is not the same way that you'll read a book or someone else will read the book. We all read the book differently. And so it was very interesting seeing other people's perspectives. And so I think that is something that I'm going to be doing more of. And that is why I got into reading Kololo Hill with Joan. I love the fact that when you buddy read, there are different perspectives. Whereas when you're just the one reading the book, it's your perspective, it's what you think. When it comes to the book reviews, I don't like detailed reviews. because I think it takes away from the person who's reading the review. And for me, what I try to do is just a small teaser, and then the teaser then should, pique someone's interest, and then it should get them going from there. I really don't, and also I find the long reviews a bit of a strenuous activity. It's just too much for me. Books are supposed to be enjoyed. If now I have to write a thesis about the book, you've taken the fun out of it. So for me, writing reviews, I really try to keep them short, interesting, something that will make someone curious enough to go buy the book or enough to go get a soft copy of the book. I try not to annotate my books. I don't like writing in my books. And the reason why I don't do that is because I swap books a lot. Like I said, I am not attached to there's certain books I'm attached to. So for example, I would never swap my copy of Big Magic. I'm attached to that book. I can see Half of a Yellow Sun. As soon as I'm done with that book, I am swapping it. And I think it's unfair if I swap the book and someone just finds lines and lines and lines of my thoughts. I think that's unfair. So I really try not to write in my books because I know they'll go to someone else. What I do is the colored sticky notes. My books have a lot of that. So if something interests me, or if I find that I'm learning something from a paragraph, I put the sticky notes there. But then when I'm done with the book, I just remove the sticky notes. If I needed to write something, because I have a book where I write these deep quotes that are in books. That's how you appear smart, eh? In these conversations you're having out here with people, drop a line you got in a book. That's how you look smart. So I have a notebook where I write those quotes that I like. And also, if you check out my IG, I try and do the same. Every now and then I'll share a memorable quote or a deep quote or something like that. But generally, that's how I read. I really try not to write in my books. In terms of buying books, reading is an expensive habit. And also this year I'm trying not to buy books. I'm trying to finish the books that are unread in the house, because I have so many books that I've not. And in October is my birthday month. Okay, so let me give the backstory. There's this thing that I do, it's called Birthdays with Frankie. So we are 12 of us. Everybody has a month. So there's a January baby, there's Faith, Saka for Coffee, she's the February baby. There is Anne, she's the April baby. We are a number of us, we are 12. So what happens is that every month, it's like a book chama. So that's essentially what it is. Every month, everybody removes a certain amount, and then we go buying books. So you give us, well, not we, me, I go buying books. You give us a list of the books that you want, and then depending on how expensive or how affordable your books are, you can get I'd put it from 9 to 15 books. So our March, I think it was March, she got a total of 15 books. And the reason was her books were fairly priced. They were not expensive. So come October, I am expecting 13 to 15 books. So I'm really trying not to buy books this year. And also I have a number of books in the house that I really need to read them. It doesn't make sense. I have books which I've not read. I'm still got to buy books. I swear I'm not gonna buy a book this month, and then find you in the bookshop at Prestige buying books. It's something we all do. It's something that I do, as much as I'm sitting here saying that I'm not buying books. So this year, I'm really trying not to buy books. The other thing is I read a lot of soft copy books, especially for new releases that you can't find in Kenya. I think our bookshops, our bookstores, in that sense, to use a Swahili word, mnatuangusha, because a book is released, you can't find it on the shelves. In fact, when TBC brought the gilded ones, I was amazed, because I was like, TBC has seen the light. I also try to incorporate a lot of ebooks, and it has saved money, because books are expensive. Let's be honest. Books, it's an expensive habit. And the beauty of soft copies is, once you have a soft copy, then it even makes buddy reading easy, because then I can send it to the next person. I know it's not the best to do. I know it takes money out of the author's pocket, and hopefully it's something which can be addressed in the future. But for now, it works for me. Yeah. Kenyan bookstagrammers to follow, and this is just top of mind. Michelle, when I joined when I joined Bookstagram, Michelle gave me crazy pressure. Empress of Buckingham. My gosh, she has such a long name. She does these creative things with her books, them out in fancy designs. That's what, and I visit her page for creativity, because in terms of creativity, Michelle will always challenge you. And the thing that I love about Michelle is that she's always ready to help, ready to share. Julie Ambani. Julie is doing this thing called book tours. Book Julie, if I get this wrong, forgive me. Bookshop tours. So she goes to different bookshops, and then she tells you, she takes a video, an IGTV with the owner or the people in the store. So she tells you more about the bookshop, the books they have in store, and I think it's something that this space really needed. Again, if you're a fantasy lover, follow Julie, because Julie reads a lot of fantasy. The other person is Mary. Her handle would be at Jean too. Mary, if you're a feminist and if you love book talk about women, Mary's to follow. She reads a lot of, her reading habits lean towards books that are centered around feminism. She's a great one to follow, and generally such a fun person. And also she runs a book club, which is a fantastic book club. They invited me one time and I had such a ball. So at Jean Derry too, follow her. And she shares her adventures. Like there's this time she went to, I forget the name, was it Kita Glass? Anyway, she shares her outdoor adventures. So she's a great person to follow. Sucker for Coffee, Faith. And Faith reads a lot, by the way. She's a fast reader, so she's constantly reviewing books. She also has a blog, so she gives a sneak peek on her IG, then she goes in depth on the blog. There is Sue. Sue is also, I love her. She's such a fun girl. She also shares a lot when it comes to books. Come to my page. Come to my page. You shall meet all these great people on my page. But for now, I don't know. They're escaping my mind. Um, Reading tips. Reading tips. Don't let people pressure you. People always say, oh, you can't say you're a reader and you've read one book. What's the definition of a reader? A reader is someone who reads. So if you've read one book and you feel you're ready, good for you. Don't saying you have to read 100 books. I remember this year when Rafu shared a tweet about faith. I don't remember the number of books she had read by that point. I was 30 something books. And people really went hard on her. Oh, these books, do you comprehend them? Or I just, Faith is a fast reader. That's Faith. Good for her. If you're a slow reader, go at your pace. Don't let life stress you and stress you. The definition of a reader is someone who reads. So if you read one book and you're happy, good for you. But don't let people be like, you can't say you're a reader and you've read one book. Even if you read a newspaper, you're a reader. Got your pace. This life, it's too hard to let other people into your head. Don't let people stress you. When it comes to books, do you? Yeah. My IG handle is reviews by Frankie. And also I make book sleeves. This is a book sleeve. And essentially what it does is it protects your book. So you know how sometimes you're carrying a ton of things, your wallet, your makeup, your coffee cup is also inside your bag, and you have a ton of things inside your bag, and then you also throw in your book in the what happens is your cover will end up crushed or folded or something. If God forbid your makeup fungukas and your lipstick ends up smudging in your book, imagine that. So that keeps your book safe. So what you do, you just slot in the book, zip it, and your book is safe. So your book crushed. So I make the sleeves. You can get sleeves. I have a variety of print, and they go for $8.50. So if you want one, slide in my DM, and we shall arrange for delivery. Finally, like I said, read what makes your heart happy. You know that Sauti Soul song? Do what makes you happy. When it comes to books, read what makes you happy.